I know, but now yours isn't going off.
It just went off.
Oh, it doesn't like that. It says watch out for stairs. How am I going to shoot video and climb stairs at the same time? Please. You're not picking a house. A seat. Oh, they're already down. Okay, come on in. There's a whole like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seats in the middle row there. I don't want you guys to have to stand up if you don't want to be standing. Feel free to sit down. So this is a space that we refer to as the theater room, for obvious reasons. Oh, let me pause. And this is Marjorie, Ken Rawlings, and Norton Baskin. They also had a cottage out at Crescent Beach, very near to where I used to live, which is probably why I'm so obsessed with all this stuff. Here's Ruth Pickering. This is the woman that was on display in the lobby after her death for 4 days. She also lived here on the 4th floor in the penthouse suite. And that's the only thing up there on that 4th floor. You guys mind turning those down just a little bit? There's a volume down on the side because you can still tell. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, I know outside is a little different because there's all that wide open space and the sound goes outward. Anyway, and then that picture that was right after Ruth Pickering's, that was Bette Richardson, and that was the young girl from Jacksonville, the girlfriend of Mr. X. So this space right here, this space was divided. See, there's a series of 3 planks of wood that start in the front of this room, and they run all the way to the back of the room. These 3 planks of wood run perpendicular to the rest of the flooring in here. So in that way, it separates this space into 2. And in 1944, on this side, this used to be hotel room number 17. And over on this side, this used to be hotel room number 15. And this was Bette Richardson's room. And that was the young girl from Jacksonville and the girlfriend of Mr. X. Now we're on the 3rd floor right now, and Mr. X stayed on this same level. Except he stayed all the way on the other side of this floor. And Mr. X murdered his girlfriend over there. And once he did that, he began to drag her body all the way across the back landing of this building, which we will pass by in a little while, and through the hallway behind us, which we will also pass through, and into her hotel room. At that point, she was already wrapped in the bedclothes of his room, and he had wrapped wet towels around her head. What he did with her when he got her here is he set her into her bathtub. Do you recall a bathtub on your way up here? That's the very one. It was right in this spot right here. So good spot. And over here, I'll draw your attention to the rectangles that are around the room. These are not here just for aesthetic purposes. These used to be and still are windows. There's just particle board and curtains over them now to make this into a darker space. But in the 1940s, you could peer out of this one and up and see into the penthouse suite, and vice versa if the window up there were set in such a way. Ruth Pickering lived up there. So when Mr. X got the body of Bette into the tub here, at that point, he already knew that Ruth Pickering upstairs had either seen something, or at the very least knew something that he did not want her to survive with. So he leaves the body of Bette in the tub. He goes out the back way of this area. There's a door in the back of this space. It swings open. Right behind it is one of only 2 doors that are bottom to that penthouse suite. There's just one staircase up. So he zips up the staircase, he gets to Ruth Pickering, and he strangles her to death in just the same way he did his own girlfriend. And he did the very same thing with Ruth's body that he did with Bette Richardson. He wraps Ruth in the bedclothes of the penthouse. He wraps wet towels around her head and, psychotically enough, ties a knot to the left of her neck, puts her in her bathtub, So now you have two deceased women who were on their respective floors, the third and the fourth floor, who were unrelated to one another and now prepared in just the same way. So what was he doing with these wet towels anyway, right? Well, he gets to the bottom of the stairs again after murdering Ruth, and that's right outside of present day. Our elevator shaft is there, but that used to be the dumbwaiter for the house, for the kitchen down below where we began our journey tonight. But up here, right outside of the dumbwaiter, he finds a kerosene lamp, and he kicks it over, and he tries to start a fire. So his intention was to make it seem as though both of these women were in fact protecting themselves from smoke inhalation by wrapping themselves in wet towels around their heads. Except they didn't know each other, and they were on different levels. And so they would have had that same idea to wrap themselves in just the same way and get into their tubs respectively. To me, when I began working here a little less than 10 years ago, that was a little far-fetched. And so I did some digging and some research. And I looked up the newspaper article about this fire that was written in the St. Augustine Record. And according to the newspaper article, this fire, there was very little flame, very little smoke, hardly any damage, and after the fact, little to no repair. This fire was a cover-up, and Mr. X was a hitman. He was here for Ruth, who lived here, and Bette just became an unfortunate circumstance. So at this point, let's all get up from our seats. If you have any further investigation to do it quickly because we're going to move to the other side of this floor. I'm going to take you to the murder room. That's very important. We all stick together in a snake form because that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to snake through to the other side, right this way. This is where everybody went.
Excuse me.
Okay, neighbor. Show me a light. It's the best. Right. All right, so I like to stop here for a moment before we get too much further because I have a warning to issue you all. So next we're going to move through a doorway, through a threshold, and once we do, I hope everyone in the back is listening, because once we do, we're going to be in the atrium, and sometimes we can get a little distracted with what's in front of us. So my warning to you is this. Once you move through this doorway, there is a case that is attached to the wall. It will be on your right. This case itself is quite dark. So if you miss it and you run into it with your face, I guarantee you, it will win. It's not going anywhere. Stay to the left. That way you don't smash into it, like I do if I don't mention it. Especially if you're shorter in stature, like a child, guide them to the left.
So just make sure not.
You run into it.
No, it's not doing anything.
Where's everybody else? Back here.
Yeah, my crew is you're waiting. Get some photos down there in that back corner. And like I said, you can point those LED grid lights down there on that second floor. Downstairs. You will see a shadow.
All right, come on in. Everyone, we'll start over here. Okay. Come on in.
I think the only ghost here is the ghost of quietness and anti-ghostiness.
Yeah, well, you know, sometimes silence is golden. Alright, so this room here is really difficult for me to escape without letting everyone know what it used to be in the building's early history. This used to be the family room for the Warden family, and they used to call it the picture room or the photo room, and I love that fact. They used to house a piano in this room, and when Mr. Warden was here in town and his family, they would have had their grand galas here, and the party would have emanated from this space out onto the landing. The family would have spent many hours of their day here. In fact, the youngest children would have played right outside of this threshold here. That was in the 1890s, and if I don't stop myself, usually I can go on and on about that era, but I won't this time. Over here, you'll notice this mantle, though, before I move back to 1944. This mantle is original to the building's construction. It runs floor to ceiling. That mantle, just like all the rest of the woodworking, is original to the building from 1887. But it's the mirror within that mantle that is encased within it. That mirror has seen every little bit of history that's come in and out of this room since the building's inception. So if you like to take photos, experiment with the mirror, because I've seen some pretty crazy things come out of the reflection. But in this space in 1944, this used to be hotel room number 13. And Mr. X had this room for $200. And he paid for a room for his girlfriend separately for another $200. We just came from there. It's clear across this same floor, about as far away as you can get on the same plane diagonally. So all in all, $400 for them both to stay here for just one night in 1944. So you might think to yourself, if Mr. X brought Bette Richardson here for good relations, perhaps her hotel room might have been a little closer to his, at the least, but it was not. And the last thing that the hotel lobby staff saw of Bette Richardson, as they saw her on this level, heading towards this room number 13, they saw she had tears strewn down her face. They saw she looked disheveled and distressed, like she had already been in an altercation, and the next thing they knew about her is they knew her to be dead, and that was it. So, April 23rd, 1944, she gets to the hotel room door here. Mr. X allows her in. Now she approaches him about going public with their relationship. Well, this was the 1940s, and he was high class, or at least he seemed to be, and she was the opposite. And this was not going to fly with him at that time. A squabble ensues, and during that squabble, this very evil, evil man reaches his hands out to her neck, and he strangles her to death right here in this space. So the bed was right about where the mummy cat is, and right in front of where I'm standing here. This is where he wrapped her body in the bedclothes, and then he wrapped wet towels around her head, and he tied that knot to the left of her neck, and he began to drag her out on this landing right out here. And that's when he heard a noise. He heard a slamming of a door downstairs on the second floor through this open air atrium. He dropped what he was doing, who he was doing what to, and he went downstairs to scare away the only witness. Now I have personal reasons to believe that Mr. X, whoever he was, I think he was privy to this building before the moment he ever set foot in here. I think he knew that witness downstairs did not live here, and I also think he knew that Ruth Pickering upstairs did live here. So come follow me now out onto this landing, just a few moments.
So like, do you ever like back?
No, go ahead.
Avery.
What?
Autumn. Mom.
Gets me every
But all I
time.
ask
Is
is
it?
if you're one of the last people out of the room that we're coming from, just be careful not to block anyone from exiting the room if they prefer to exit. But here we have the heart of the Castle Warden. And this is a huge reason why I love this building, is the architecture of it all. In fact, if you look at on the inside of the floor that we've been standing on, all the way around, the amount of detail within the construction of this building, to me, is just astounding. This is the Moorish style of architecture. Very often I picture what it would have been like to have been a part of maybe one of Mr. Warden's grand galas here in the 1890s, since the party would have emanated from the space we just came from, out onto this landing, people dressed to the nines in a grand soiree. I think a little too much about that era. Anyway, right down there, you'll notice some glass below that landing, and beyond that glass, that used to be an open-air balcony. And that's where everyone was eating their Easter morning breakfast, right below where Mr. X was dragging the body of Bette Richardson. Now everyone take a nice gander upward. See this very beautiful glass above us. If you have spent any length of time at all in St. Augustine, you might have already heard the largest collection of Louis C. Tiffany glass is held at Flagler College. It surrounds their cafeteria. But this is the real deal. Louis C. Tiffany glass. But what is beyond that is in fact a fourth floor. And not a lot of people know we even have a fourth floor here, but the only thing up there is a place we call the penthouse suite. It's just beyond that bluish, greenish, kind of purplish border around the bottom, around the outside there. And that's where Ruth Pickering lived for 4 years. Now Ruth was friends with the author that owned this building, and so in that way, they were high society together. Ruth Pickering was married, and she had a house downtown St. Augustine with her husband. Unfortunately, though, her husband was physically abusive to her, so more often than not, she was quite frightened of going home to him, and naturally, her friend Marjorie wanted to protect her and allowed her to reside up there on that fourth floor. That time did span over April 23rd, 1944, and Ruth did not attend church that Easter Sunday morning. There's a door right across from where I'm standing over here. That door in the corner, that is the second door bottom to the penthouse suite. So Ruth Pickering came down and got herself wrapped up in all of this, and however she did, got her killed. So at this point, I'm going to bring everyone downstairs. We're going to go visit the witness room. And so I have a warning to issue you all yet again before we head down these stairs, and it is this, that at the top of these stairs, even if you think you've got it, please hang on to the handrail, because the last step in particular on this set of stairs tends to be very dim. I don't want anyone to miss it. So if we can kind of scoot back this way, this gate opens awkwardly. All right, so if everyone will hold the gate to the neighbor behind them, that will work wonderfully. Right this way, watch your step.
I should just say go to the trip.
Right into this suffocatingly dark space. Right into this suffocatingly dark.
Just put a light there on the bottom step.
Remember the last time we came here and the tour guide said right in that corner is where we usually get people. Everyone turned to that corner, someone flashed a light, and there was just a lady standing there. And she was a tourist and she was like, oh.
Try to find a spot near the sides or the back of the room. Just like keep the doorway clear.
For people that run.
Right this way.
Please don't touch it.
Come on in. That's good. We'll just find spots here away from the doorway. All right, so here we are. This is a room that I like to spend a little bit of time talking about the bodily sensations it tends to give people, but I don't, by the time I get here, I'm running out of time. But I just want you to all pay attention to the signals your body is giving you, because even if your meter's not going off, it really takes us all paying attention to goosebumps or any kind of sensations that you get on your body. That is your intuition. Some people come in here and they don't feel a thing, but it all depends on your body and how willing you are to listen to it. But anyway, this space is one that we call the witness room. And on April 23rd, 1944, there was a man staying in here. And he saw something that no one should ever have to see. Now, we all know by now that Mr. X stayed one level above this. He murdered his girlfriend up there, and once he did that, he began to drag the body across the back landing of this building, in clear view of this doorway. Now, the man from this room, on Easter Sunday morning, he could have been at church. He could have been eating his Easter Sunday morning breakfast on this same level, just over here, beyond the glass. It's where everyone else was eating that morning, everyone that wasn't already at Easter Mass. But this man was neither of those places. This man was right here, and he was seeing what was happening up on that landing. And in fright, he made a couple of mistakes. His very first one was he slammed his hotel room door shut. Now, before that moment, his presence was not known, but once he slammed that door shut, he couldn't hide the sound filtering right through this open air atrium and right up to Mr. X. So a few minutes later, surprise, surprise, he hears a knock at his door. And so, guess what this witness did in his anxiety? Anybody?
Open the door.
That's right. He opened this door right back up again. And it was Mr. X down here for a reason. And we do not know what Mr. X said to this man to make him leave so hastily. But I can take a pretty good guess. What we do know is what the hotel lobby staff wrote of for the entire day. 2 real women were found dead here that day, and so their account was quite detailed. The very first thing they wrote of was of the man from this room, leaving in haste. He basically booked it down these stairs. He did stop in the hotel lobby to sign out, and when he did that, he was so agitated. He ripped through 3 full pages of that lobby book, and once he was done talking with the staff that morning, he was never heard from again until the hotel received news of his death. So whether or not he kept the secret of what he saw to his grave, we won't ever know. So come follow me now down to the lobby and we'll tie up some loose ends now.
I think most likely we told someone. Guess I did. It's like,
and I promise I won't be too long-winded about this. It's about the residual energy that we're going to capture tonight. You know, those orbs and those light ribbons and those mists. I do not feel like it is just the deaths that occur in space that cause those residual humblings. I also feel like it is the emotional risks that happen to us day in and day out as we walk this earth. So if you think about that, and you think about yourselves for a moment, what spaces do you fill up each day? What emotional risks do you leave behind? Are they good? Are they bad? And sometimes we can't help to leave either. But what we can do is think to ourselves about the state of this world and think about possibly leaving some good emotional risks on purpose in our wake. And I'm going to leave you with that thought. My name is Colleen. It has been a pleasure. Right this way. So if you put your meters and your lasers up here in these